bit of each. A little bit of flapping, a little bit of gliding. It's the compromise. It's how it's all achieved. I went out a little while ago and had a look at a hilltop in Cromer at a hang glider. It's using all the bird principles of straightforward gliding. It's a big floppy old kite, very thin, very light, very strong skin, but the whole secret of it is the rigidity of the frame that's holding the wing in place. But the magic of the whole thing is that when the airflow strikes it, it forms an aerofoil. And an aerofoil is that gorgeous curved shape, that parabola, that induces lift. And it induces it simply by a faster airflow over the top surface than over the undersurface. The result is a lift. There's very little wind. It must have been very difficult to maneuver. But there is the simple essence of flight being demonstrated, just like a pterodactyl must have done it, with very much the same sort of landing, I suspect. But let's have a look at the way it all began. The first real bird we discovered from fossil remains was called Archaeopteryx. It had developed from a long line of small dinosaurs, probably dinosaurs that lived in trees. It had grown feathers where the scales had been, because the construction is very much the same. It had little wings. I should think its aerodynamics were probably about the same as a Rhode Island red. Its wing loading was very heavy. We're going to talk about that later on. Now, to understand this thing about wing structure and how they're made, it helps a lot to consider a bird's wing in relation to our own arm. Let's have a very simple wing here. There's the body of the bird with a wing coming out of it. Now, this is no particular bird. It's just a standard wing. The first bone comes out to about there, and that is our humerus. Two more bones run out, which are radius and ulna, these bones to this point. Then would come our hand, the thumb, which produces its own little wing in a bird here called a bastard wing, or the alula, and the fingers, the phalanges, come out here, and they give rise to the main flight feathers on the wing. And that's really more or less what it's all about. The loading of the wing is the area of that compared with the weight it has to carry into the air. A vulture must be one of the most perfect examples of a lightly laden wing. Remember, the weight of the body that has to be sustained in the air in relationship to the area of the wing that's supporting it. A huge area of wing, a light body, and therefore an absolutely effortless glide. There's another point to consider here, aspect ratio, the relationship between the span, the total width of the wings, and the chord, the depth of the wing. The two are related, but a high aspect ratio bird is the most perfect and efficient soaring machine there is. A vulture is perhaps not as extreme as an albatross, but it's getting somewhere near there. It's a fantastic glider. This is a Ruppel's griffon vulture in the Rift Valley of Kenya, and you can really see some of the controls that are going on here. The use of the tail, spread tail. Not a wing beat because there's an upcurrent rising. Vultures get up late. They like to get up and soar on a rising current of air, so there's no effort at all. They can even hang their feet for a little bit of added lift, rather as an aeroplane uses flaps. But don't confuse him with this sort of flying. This is a fulmar on a vertical airstream going straight up a cliff. This is just like a ball on a fountain at a rifle range. If you threw a ball out over the cliff, it would fly. It would go straight up into the air. It would have no control. The fulmar is, in a sense, flying, but the wind is just blowing it straight up. Almost anything would be blown up in this kind of a wind. Look how he's spilling it all over his tail. But very great control all the time. Paddles, tail, and wings. Now, we've been looking at soaring flight, gliding flight, deflecting the airflow downwards, but let's look at the master of flapping flight. First, a spring into the air, and the eagle's aloft. That massively powerful downstroke is what's driving it forward. As he comes up, as he brings his outer wing up, it's feathered. There's no drag at all. See, there go the downstrokes, doing the actual driving. And then as the wing is lifted, they follow and do another one, like that. But it's not quite as simple as that. That's sure where all the big force is coming from. But look at our wing again. If you cut a line through there and then look at it this way, you get the aerofoil section, the magic aerofoil section. The airflow is going fast over the top and slower over the bottom. And the result is a lower pressure here than here, a resultant force lifting it up. And you get this magic lift. Now here's a splendid little everyday bird to study, a blue tit. Beautiful garden bird. Short wings. We'll watch him do that again. Come back on the perch. Very, very short, like a fan. Very low wing loading, light body weight, and therefore enormously maneuverable. In that very slow motion, you can see the whole thing. Closing the wing right up to the body, losing a little height, going quite fast. Everything they do is fast. Their movements are so nimble and quick. But watch him come up to the nesting perch and land. Braking hard, just like a parachute, legs out as shock absorbers. A little peek inside, bill full of food for the young. Now, these are called nidicolous birds, not ridiculous, nidicolous. It means that they are born very feeble, usually naked and blind, and they can't come out of their eggs, and they have to be fed all the time by their parents. But they grow fast, and you can see here the feather development beginning to happen. These flight feathers on the wings are beginning to grow quite fast. They've got further to grow, and so they go quicker than the others. Feathers are growing fast on the back now. The down's keeping them warm underneath. They'll soon be ready. It's quite easy to see on those little birds the waxy shafts that protect the growing feather in the very early stages. Little shafts full of blood which nourish the feather, keep it going, and ultimately, and quite quickly, it'll grow into a proper feather like this, but needless to say, nothing like as big, because this fell out of a bald eagle and I picked it up in Alaska. But look at this, because this is the structure of the thing. The quill, very strong and very stiff, but very light, with a vein either side, and the vein on the leading edge of the feather is much narrower than the vein on the trailing edge. Now, the next thing you notice about it is that if you pull it apart, it'll come fairly easily and leave a gap. But you can close it up again equally easily. Even on an old feather that's been molted, on a living feather, it works even better than that. Now, let's just have a look how that works in detail. See, what we've got here is a microscope picture. Look at it carefully. It's difficult to understand, but if I sketch the thing, I think it'll make it clearer. Let's consider that we've got the shaft down the middle of the feather here, big, thick, strong shaft, and one of these barbs coming off, greatly enlarged, and another one down here, and another one down here. Now, these ones have got little hooks, and these ones have got little ridges. They're very strong, and they're very springy, and when they're pushed together, they engage and they hold, very, very much like a zip fastener, but a great deal more reliable than any zip fastener I've ever met. And that's the secret of it, a feather that'll repair itself, keep airtight, and it's got to be kept in perfect repair, otherwise it's useless to the bird. This is hardly flying, and these are certainly not nidicolous birds. These are the other kind, the birds which are hatched, all ready to go. These are ducks, they're golden-eye, and they're encouraged to nest in these nesting boxes in Iceland because they do occasionally harvest the eggs. But see what happens when these nidifugous ducks get off to life. First of all, the mother jumps down, and there she stands, and she calls the others. But it's crazy to call this flying. This is gravity. They just hurl themselves off, and they're flexible, and very rugged, and they bounce. And that's how it's always done. That's the way it's designed to be. Before there were houses, they'd be doing it from quite high rock crevices onto the beach, or into grass like this. And then the golden-eye will gather them up and lead them down towards the water. Water to ducks is survival. Just one last one to go, and join the whole brood. But the interesting thing about ducks and water is that there'll come a time when the parent duck herself is molted out and she can't fly either. And they'll all be together on the water, safe and able to feed. Now, a penguin flies underwater. It absolutely does nothing else but fly underwater. And there is its wing, its little flipper. Now, the thing about it is that the flipper is exactly the same area for water as a bird's wing is that flies in the air. It's smaller because the water's denser. It flies underwater and it flies like a bullet. There's nothing faster than a penguin underwater flying. You see, an albatross wing is not very different in shape from a penguin, just enormously larger for use in air. And its takeoff graceful because of the uprising current and straight out over the sea in the Falkland Islands. Takeoff and landing is quite a thing to consider with birds. These flamingos, greaters and lessers, together on Lake Nakuru in the Kenya Rift Valley, they show it admirably because they're starting, in a sense, a couple of feet above the ground because of their long legs. Rather like that albatross, they've got a little height to lose first, but the long legs, running across the ground through the shallow water, give them flying speed. Their wings are not all that big, and they're quite heavy birds, so the wing loading is high, and the run helps them get airborne. It's quite an exercise in mass flying, too, because there's a lot to keep clear of in a flock that size. One of the most spectacular sights there is in birds. A lot of very heavy water birds, like a pelican, get off the ground paddling in the same sort of way, and then fly very low over the water because the cushion of air underneath gives them lift and buoys up their bodies. So we've got our old pelican airborne, and there he is with the cushion of air between the water and his body, helping him along. But any aviator will tell you that there are 2 points when you need most concentration, the takeoff and the landing. So let's consider the landing now and look at how some of the birds do it and the special places they have to land on. Beautifully done, beautifully done. But then, water's not the most difficult thing to land on. You see how they spread paddles are taking the shock, and they're landing like flying boats. Water skis, sliding along till they come to rest, and then folding their wings gently. The wings have scarcely stalled at all in that sort of landing. See this one again. Losing speed, rather gentle, then a glide, losing a little bit more, the air cushion beginning to operate. Another few strokes to line up, the paddles coming forward, all collected together, then right forward to skid to a halt. And just at the last moment, you see a stall and the break-up of airflow and a few little feathers standing up on its back. But when it comes to real hovering, there's only one, the hummingbird. The first essential difference that you must have noticed with this hummingbird is that its body is vertical and its wings are beating fore and aft instead of up and down. Now, I'm going to try and draw this, but it's not easy. It's not easy to explain. If there's the body of the hummingbird in its vertical position and the tail down like that, let's consider, first of all, the extreme of the forward stroke. The wing is in that sort of position. Now, these bones in here are very short, the upper arm bones, and they're incredibly flexible, so that there's a great deal of movement this way. Now, it's made a beat forward, and it's got a good deal of lift from that. But as it goes back, the wing forms this shape. This surface has now gone underneath, and although it looks much the same in profile, it's capsized, but it's getting a lift all the way on both strokes, like a helicopter blade. The action here is not easy to explain in a two-dimensional drawing, but I think a high-speed camera is going to help us a great deal more. I said a helicopter. Well, it's the principle of the helicopter, the perfect hovering, but the analogy is really more accurately a stern oar over a dinghy. If you've ever seen someone standing in the stern and sculling, that's what's happening, this back and forth movement, giving thrust both ways. But remember that hummingbirds beat their wings at up to 80 strokes to a second. You see on those back strokes how the wing has capsized and the upper surface has become the bottom surface. Although the forward stroke is giving more drive, the backward stroke is giving quite a lot too. And the tail is being used as an aerodynamic trim, and it's also being used as a mass balance, just a simple lever, so that it can get really accurately into every flower. That's perfect precision hovering, and there's no bird quite like it. Well, we started out with that vulture that hardly moved its wings at all and just soared along leisurely. We finished up with the little hummingbird with the fastest wing beat that any bird has got. And between those, we saw all kinds of different wing shapes, different birds with different roles to play. Well, I've been sketching one here, which we haven't seen, and you've probably never seen one at all. But I wonder if by now you could tell by looking at this wing shape what sort of a bird it is, or at least how it behaves. It's a white-tailed hawk, and it's riding on the wind over Patagonia. It's a compromised bird, like so many birds of prey. They live by their flight, by their hunting, and so they've developed a compromised wing shape, good for soaring, but short enough to be maneuverable, lightly laden, enabling it to perform every maneuver that's required to earn its keep. Perfect control, slowly descending onto a bush to take up a mouse. 2 gentle strokes, lifted into the air. Mouse gripped in one foot. It leisurely passes it forward and eats it on the wing, just as you and I might sit on a fence and eat a sandwich. Now that is successful flight. That is all the advantages of flight rolled into one. Now you don't have to go to Patagonia to study your bird aerodynamics. What you want to do is to go right outside now and look at the first birds you see. Pigeons maybe, sparrows, gulls. There's always birds in sight, even in the biggest cities, and compare their wings. And that's how you learn all about birds. Goodbye now.